projects supporting a healthy lifestyle. For the period 2021-2027, 470 million euros will be available for sport actions under Erasmus+, 290 million euros under Horizon Europe, and 4.4 million euros under EU for Health. If you want to know more about the campaign and the concrete actions planned, please consult our press release. And don't forget to do some sports this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. We will take that to heart. And now, Johannes, over to you for good news on our Horizon Europe program.
Good news, but impossible to beat Sonia on that one. So thank you, Eric and Sonia, and good afternoon. Today, Iceland and Norway have formally become associated to Horizon Europe. So these two are the very first non-EU countries becoming associated to Horizon Europe, the EU's new framework program for research and innovation. This means that entities in Iceland and Norway will now be able to participate in Europe's 95.5 billion research and innovation program under the same conditions as entities from EU member states. This will allow us to deepen our cooperation in science, research and innovation, focusing on common priorities to twin green and digital transition, public health and Europe's competitiveness, but it also reconfirms our commitment to supporting international research and innovation partnerships. Negotiations are ongoing with many more non-EU countries that have expressed interest to become associated to Horizon Europe, so stay tuned on that one, and we have more information for you in our daily news. Thank you.
Merci Johannes. Je voudrais également vous rappeler que les ministres chargés de la protection des consommateurs tiennent aujourd'hui une réunion informelle en Slovénie à laquelle participe le commissaire Didier Reynders pour le compte de la Commission. Les ministres discutent des priorités et actions futures dans le domaine de la protection des consommateurs, de la révision des règles européennes relatives à la sécurité des produits et au crédit à la consommation, ainsi que de la situation du secteur des voyages et du tourisme. Une conférence de presse avec le commissaire Reynders aura lieu à 15h15 et comme d'habitude, je vous demande de réserver vos questions liées à ces sujets pour cette conférence de presse. Finalement, je tiens à vous signaler que nous organisons cet après-midi à 14h30 un briefing technique off the record et sous embargo pour vous sur la première réunion du Conseil du commerce et des technologies TTC. Je vous remercie de garder vos questions à ce sujet donc pour ce briefing technique. Voilà, avec ceci, nous pouvons passer à vos questions et je passe la parole à Dorota, que j'ai très maltraité hier par erreur. Je m'en excuse.
Merci beaucoup. Donc c'est par rapport. Sorry, it's about a migration crisis. You said yesterday that the Commission, Ylva Johansson, will speak with the Polish Interior Minister, and she wants to come on the border with Belarus in the coming days. I would like to know, do you have any update on that? Because in the office of the Polish Interior Minister, they say that no dates have been established yet for the visit of the Commissioner. And on the same subject regarding the proposition to let Frontex forces there or even the functionaries of the representation of the European Commission in Warsaw, what kind of reply were you given to the proposition to send the representatives of the Commission to the border? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So regarding, first of all, the phone call between the Commissioner and the Minister, I understand that the contacts between the administrations to schedule the call have been ongoing and are still ongoing. Of course, it is a little bit more complicated than anticipated to schedule this call, but this is still very much something that we are pursuing. When it comes to the specifics of the Commissioner's visit to Poland and then the technical visit that I also spoke to yesterday, this is still also something to be defined, and indeed something that the Commissioner will discuss with the Minister when that call takes place. And finally, when it comes to the issue of deployment of Frontex in this situation, this would need to be requested by the Polish authorities. We discussed previously that from the Commission's perspective, it is something that would be a very good idea, and it also could be one of the subjects that the Commissioner would discuss with the Minister when that call takes place.
Follow-up, Dorota.
Why is it difficult to schedule a phone call?
Dorota, I mean, we are trying to schedule a phone call. It takes two to organize a phone call. It's not for us to say why it is difficult to organize a phone call, but we continue trying. Any other questions on this issue? Yes?
Nikolai Nielsen, EU Observer. Adalbert, in the context of Poland, yesterday you mentioned that border management must respect fundamental rights. And I was wondering if in the Commission's view, that Poland is respecting those rights by not allowing in any journalists, NGOs, and humanitarian assistance to a border zone where at least 4 people have already died. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikolai. Allow me perhaps to make a general comment about that situation, reiterating that, as we said repeatedly, we recognize that the Polish authorities are dealing with a difficult situation. This situation has been created by an attempt to instrumentalize people for political purposes. And in this context, it is essential that for Poland to carry out border management duties effectively. However, this should not come at the expense of human life. And we urge member state authorities to ensure that people at the border are given the necessary care and assistance.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Adalbert on home affairs? Please only keep your hand raised in the chat if your question is for Adalbert. Mose.
Yes. Thank you very much, Eric. I would also like to ask a question about the situation at the Polish-Russian border, where we have heard now by media that a number of people have been found dead in the forest. And it was discussed also yesterday, and was very difficult, or impossible, in fact, to extract any condemnation by the Commission of the Polish authorities' action. But I would like to ask a question which is related to this, and that is, as you remember, the interim decision taken by the European Court of Human Rights some time ago, ordering, let's say, Poland to provide food and water and other assistance to those stranded migrants. Okay, I could ask also the Polish authorities in the court about what has happened, but if I remember correctly, I think the Commission is monitoring.
Could you ask us your question?
Okay, if the Commission is monitoring the situation at the border, do you possess any information if the Polish authorities have applied that interim decision, which, by the way, expired on the 15th of September? Thank you.
Albert.
Thank you, Mose. Of course, we follow the situation in Poland and at the Polish-Belarusian border very, very closely. However, we are not in a position to comment on the implementation by Poland of a decision of the European Court of Human Rights. We have stressed, of course, repeatedly that member states are signatories to the European Convention on Human Rights and are required to implement the measures indicated by the European Court. However, in order to obtain accurate information about the state of implementation of each individual decision, I would ask you to speak to the Polish authorities, as we've also discussed by email.
Mose, you have a follow-up.
It was taken in order to prevent what the court said irreparable harm to the migrants. And the people have died in the meantime. I suppose that is, of course, irreparable. So I think the situation is very concerning. Wouldn't you agree?
Of course we agree that the situation is very concerning, Mose, and I believe that's exactly the answer that Albert gave to the first question. Thank you. So yes, the answer is that the situation is concerning. We are concerned, and as Adalbert has said, we urge the Polish authorities, whilst of course doing or carrying out their responsibilities when it comes to managing the border, doing it in such a way that they can care for the people who are there. Gabriela.
Thank you, Gabriela Batista, Reuters. On the same matter, could you explain or could you relay what was Poland's answer to the idea of sending Frontex staff to the Polish-Belarusian border? Why exactly does Poland not want to do it? Thank you.
So maybe I will allow myself to correct the premise of your question. We do not have any refusal from the Polish side for a technical visit that I mentioned yesterday. The contacts are ongoing at the moment with the Polish authorities about this issue as well. And when we have full information about what will happen during that visit, we'll be very happy to communicate about it.
Thank you, Alexander. Oh, sorry, Gabriele, you have a follow-up.
Yes, thank you. While I understand what you're saying, Adalbert, on the other hand, Polish authorities, the government spokesman, have already said that Poland has one of the biggest border guard forces in Europe, and it does not need Frontex assistance in the form of, sort of boots on the ground. So they have already said on the record that they don't want Frontex staff on the Belarusian border.
I understand the issue of of assistance by Frontex on the ground is separate from the technical level visit that I mentioned yesterday. So apologies if I confused the two in response to your question. When it comes to assistance by Frontex, I also expressed yesterday our position, as mentioned previously by Commissioner Johansson. From our perspective, it would be a good idea for our shared border to be protected using our shared resources, namely those provided by the agency. Of course, this is something that would need to be requested by the Polish authorities, and it is also something that the Commissioner will discuss with the Minister when the call takes place.
Thank you. Alexander, a question on Home Affairs.
Yes, thank you. It's about the spyware software Pegasus. The French media Mediapart reported a little while ago that traces of the infamous spyware has been found on the phones of 5 French ministers. And we already heard Commissioner Reynders condemn Pegasus in stark terms, but I was wondering, have the phones of commissioners and key people in the Commission been checked for traces of Pegasus in the past, and is the Commission intending to make such checks now that there is evidence that at least one national government had their phones partially infected? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. We'll come back to that question after we finished with other questions related to migration, Alexander, so stay tuned. David.
Merci. Adalbert, tu as mentionné l'instrumentalisation des personnes pour des raisons politiques. Je crois que, comme dans tous les communiqués, vous faites référence à ce que fait M. Loukachenko. Mais quelle est la différence par rapport au comportement du gouvernement polonais et d'autres gouvernements en Europe qui laissent mourir des migrants en fait pour des raisons politiques, avec des politiques qui sont contraires au droit international, comme l'ont affirmé le Haut Commissariat des Nations Unies et l'Organisation internationale des migrants. Merci.
David, je pense que nous avons clairement exprimé en début de ce briefing quelle est notre position par rapport aux obligations de la Pologne dans ce dossier. Gérer de manière, bien entendu, efficace ces frontières face à ce qui est clairement une instrumentalisation de la part des autorités biélorusses, mais de l'autre côté, de le faire en respectant, bien entendu, leurs obligations au titre du droit européen et, bien entendu, en faisant en sorte que les personnes qui se trouvent dans cette situation soient soutenues. Donc je pense que notre position est très claire. Y a-t-il d'autres questions pour nous aujourd'hui sur les sujets affaires intérieures avant de revenir à la question d'Alexandre? Enfin, je voulais dire migration. Ça n'est pas le cas. Merci. Balázs, Pegasus. You want to take it, Christian? Okay.
Yeah, look, Alexander, thanks for your question. On Pegasus, I think you mentioned yourself that Commissioner Reynders has given a very clear position on this in the European Parliament. We have also given it here. He was saying that the Commission strongly condemns any illegal access to systems or any form of illegal interception of users' communication. In fact, this is a crime throughout the Union. Unquote from Commissioner Reynders. As regards the security of our own staff, I mean, this would be indeed more a question for Balázs, but I think normally this is something that we do not openly discuss. Of course, there are measures in place to ensure that. And apart from that, we have seen the reports in the French media. But again, our position, I think, on these allegations is quite clear.
Thank you. Alexander, I think indeed we have no intention of commenting on the security arrangements that the Commission takes on these issues, but you can rest assured, of course, that the Commission services are attentive to any threats to the mobile devices that we use in the context of our jobs. You have a follow-up, Alexander?
Yeah, thank you. Just very briefly, because Commissioner Breton yesterday at the presser was so kind to show us his two phones, his crypted Commission phone and his private phone. And I was wondering, do the security arrangements that are certainly meticulous by the Commission extend to the private devices used by Commissioner Breton and other commissioners?
We have no comment to make on that, Alexander. Sorry. For the same reasons as I said before, we do not comment the security arrangements that we use to ensure the security of our operations. David, on this ou sur ça? Non?
En fait, c'est pour Christian, mais Christian.
Ah oui, alors vas-y. Je t'en prie.
Merci. C'est par rapport à l'arrestation hier soir du président catalan Carles Puigdemont en Italie, en Sardaigne. Je voulais savoir si la Commission a des commentaires à faire, surtout en vertu du fait que l'Espagne avait déclaré au tribunal de l'Union européenne que le mandat d'arrêt était suspendu et apparemment la Cour suprême espagnole ne reconnaît pas ce que l'Espagne a dit au tribunal de l'Union européenne.
Oui, merci David pour cette question. Nous avons bien sûr vu cette information dans les médias. Je peux seulement dire que c'est une chose pour les autorités judiciaires et nous respectons leur indépendance.
Merci Christian. Y a-t-il d'autres questions pour lui? Question d'état de droit? Non. Alors nous passons à d'autres sujets. Yes, please.
Merci, Eric. Jerome Hughes here. I have a question. You were asked about this yesterday, but the report hadn't been published. It's in relation to the European Court of Auditors, and it's quite a scathing report in relation to corruption in Ukraine. So I'm just asking, are you going to implement all the recommendations in the report? And I understand, of course, we hear that Ukraine is a strategic partner and so on. I guess that's in the context of Russia. So when you look at this scathing report, does it make you think that perhaps you've picked the wrong side in all of this? It actually holds a lot of cards in terms of energy and that type of thing, and yet we see this grand, as to quote them, corruption levels in Ukraine. And is the EU going to stop sending billions of euro to Ukraine until such time as you're confident that the corruption has ended?
Let me clarify one thing, I think, from the beginning. Ukraine is a strategic partner, full stop. It is not vis-à-vis one or the other country that Ukraine is a strategic partner. Ukraine is an important country in its own right, in view of its deep ties with the European Union at many, many different levels, including historic, economic, cultural, etc., etc. So I would refrain from placing the policy we have vis-à-vis this country, or in fact any other country, simply in the context of relations with a third country. That would be profoundly mistaken. So that's on the general context of our relations with Ukraine. Now, like any country, Ukraine certainly has its issues, and this is why it's good that there are reports that look into the management of funds. And on this, I can now give the floor to Anna.
So many thanks for the question. I think that it's safe to say, of course, that since the Maidan Revolution, the EU has devoted considerable political capital and resources, of course, to pursue anti-corruption agenda in Ukraine. And in some areas, EU-supported reforms actually, have been very successful. Notably, support has allowed to close a space for corruption to occur, introducing competition and transparency in a number of sectors, including in the banking and in the gas sector. You are probably aware that new anti-corruption agencies have been created in Ukraine, and there was the launch, of course, of the High Anti-Corruption Court. So this is, of course, the anti-corruption structure in Ukraine. Now it is complete. We've also seen an unprecedented, transparent electronic asset declaration system, which of course requires public officials and politicians to disclose information about their private assets, and this has been introduced. So, a lot has been achieved. However, of course, challenges continue, and the reform efforts, of course, need to be kept up. But I think that it's fair to say that there have been progress, and that, from the European Union side, we will continue to support Ukraine in these reform efforts.
Thank you. Momjil, a question on this. I can't believe I have to say this, but please press speak.
No, my question is related to the visit of the President von der Leyen to the Western Balkans, not to this.
Okay, well then, unraise your hand until we come to other issues. Christian, une question sur l'Ukraine.
Oui, sur ce rapport de la Cour des comptes européenne, je voudrais savoir si vous n'avez pas le sentiment que ce que raconte ce rapport sur la grande corruption ne va pas jeter un froid dans l'opinion publique européenne et les contribuables européens. Voilà un pays qui effectivement reçoit beaucoup d'argent de la part de l'Union européenne, et les auditeurs de la Cour des comptes disent que ce pays est complètement gangrené, et gangrené au plus haut niveau, parce qu'en fait on parle des oligarques. Donc on reçoit ça, enfin moi personnellement je reçois ça en me demandant si effectivement tout ce qu'on a fait, et les auditeurs le soulignent, c'est insuffisant pour lutter contre la corruption. Donc, mais j'ai deux questions. La première, c'est comment avez-vous accueilli et est-ce que vous allez soutenir effectivement les mesures qui ont été mises en place en Ukraine jeudi pour lutter contre les oligarques? Et la deuxième, c'est une recommandation qui est assez générale, ça fait un bon bout de temps qu'elle traîne. Il est effectivement question de doter l'Union européenne d'une arme pour pouvoir interdire d'entrer les oligarques soupçonnés dans un État partenaire de l'Union européenne, leur interdire d'entrer dans l'Union européenne et de pouvoir utiliser les avoirs qu'ils ont. Là, on ne parle pas d'obscurs petits fonctionnaires, on parle de gens qui sont des milliardaires et qui ont investi dans les pays de l'Union européenne. Est-ce que vous allez présenter une proposition en ce sens et dans combien de temps? C'est un peu la question que demande le Parlement européen. Jusqu'à présent, tout ça n'est resté qu'un petit peu des suggestions. Donc, est-ce que vous allez concrétiser ça? Et effectivement, est-ce que le sujet va être abordé lors du sommet avec les partenaires? Merci. Qui est prévu avant la fin de l'année.
Merci. Anna sur la première et mes collègues se battent pour savoir qui va répondre à la seconde. Anna.
Parce que tu as demandé, Christian, sur la proposition de loi qui a été en effet adoptée hier dans le Parlement de l'Ukraine, on salue la détermination du président Zelensky d'adresser l'influence qui est très deeply rooted, si on peut dire comme ça. Désolé, le mot ne vient pas en français tout de suite, sur les intérêts des oligarques dans la vie économique et politique de l'Ukraine. On a pris note de l'adoption de le projet de loi pour prévenir les menaces aux sécurités nationales qui sont associées à l'excessive influence de personnes avec un poids économique et politique dans la vie, donc les oligarques. On pense que c'est un pas en avance. Bien sûr, maintenant, on s'attend que la loi soit effectivement implémentée ou mise en œuvre fully et avec détermination dans une manière legally sound. Comme je viens de dire il y a un moment donné, clairement, on a besoin de voir plus de pas. Donc, la lutte contre la corruption est quelque chose qu'on doit se poursuivre et on pense que le gouvernement ukrainien doit toujours faire plus de pas en avance, en particulier pour fermer le gap institutionnel qui en reste. Et à nouveau, comme on vient d'expliquer, on a investi, et l'Ukraine a aussi investi beaucoup d'efforts pour lutter contre la corruption, y compris dans le secteur bancaire et du gaz, par exemple. Et c'est clair qu'on devra voir aussi le renforcement des institutions existantes pour continuer à travailler sur cet important effort.
Sur la deuxième question.
Sur la deuxième question, je pense que Christian connaît très bien les procédures pour en discuter et en parler de les actions dans l'Union européenne. Et je pense que ça ne nous appartient pas maintenant d'y faire de conjectures ou des hypothèses sur place. Tu sais qu'il y a un régime en place et l'Union européenne a pris des mesures et des sanctions contre les personnes pour de détournement de fonds en Ukraine. Donc c'est clair que c'est un instrument qui est à la disposition de l'Union européenne et tu sais déjà les procédures que c'est une chose qu'en tout cas doit être approuvée par les États membres par unanimité et à nouveau je ne pense pas que c'est à moi ici maintenant sur le podium d'y spéculer là-dessus plus.
Christian.
Oui, deux observations. Je pense que ça ne vous a pas échappé dans le rapport. Il était noté qu'effectivement l'Union européenne avait pris des sanctions contre une vingtaine de personnes qui étaient soupçonnées de détournement de fonds. Et sur ces sanctions, la moitié ont été annulées par les tribunaux de l'Union européenne. Donc, ce qui montre qu'effectivement, c'est très très difficile d'aider un pays qui est englué dans la corruption à la combattre. Mais non, ma question, elle est est-ce que vous allez présenter une proposition? Parce que M. Borrell parle de ça, répond aux députés européens qui lui demandent est-ce qu'on va se doter d'un régime pour lutter contre la corruption, etc. Il répond oui, mais est-ce qu'il va y avoir quelque chose ou est-ce que c'est quelque chose que vous allez laisser tranquillement mourir de sa belle mort? Le rapport, c'est la première recommandation. La première recommandation des auditeurs de la Cour des comptes, c'est ça.
Excusez-moi, merci. Essayons de nous en tenir, s'il vous plaît, aux questions. Sinon, on va être là pendant 2 heures. Ta question est très claire et très pertinente. Peter, you want to say a word on this?
Merci, bonjour. Anna a déjà expliqué que ce sont les procédures entre les pays membres et la procédure pour commencer les discussions sur les sanctions. C'est une chose procédurale et nous jamais commentons sur les procédures. Mais je voudrais souligner une chose. La lutte contre la corruption, c'est une chose dans l'intérêt premièrement de l'Ukrainienne. Le gouvernement ukrainien, le président Zelensky, ils sont bien conscients que c'est un devoir qu'on doit suivre et c'est une chose que nous discutons régulièrement dans notre engagement avec l'Ukraine. Nous avons le moyen, ce ne sont pas les sanctions premièrement. Nous avons un instrument très fort qui est l'accord d'association. C'est un accord qui est plus profond et plus ambitieuse de tous les accords que nous avons avec les partenaires. Donc, dans le cadre de l'accord d'association avec l'Ukraine, nous discutons tous les défis et tous les problèmes et nous soutenons l'Ukraine dans la lutte contre la corruption et aussi dans le domaine de, comment on dit, déoligarchisation. Parce que c'est une chose très importante, mais nous avons les plateformes, nous avons les moyens pour discuter ça et trouver les solutions. Et les sanctions, ce sont une mesure et un instrument qu'on utilise dans la situation s'il n'y a pas aucun autre instrument.
Mose. Okay, we go to Catherine. Catherine, you have the floor.
Yeah, so a question for Peter, firstly. One of the things that this report points out is that if you don't tackle this grand corruption, the state-level corruption or the involvement of oligarchs in state capture, then the petty corruption, will never be effectively tackled. And so do you think that the Commission got the order of things wrong? I mean, you say, talking about this Supreme Court, the Court on Anti-Corruption, are there lessons to be learnt? I mean, should you have done that initially? I mean, because what the report says is that tens of billions of euros, European taxpayers' money, has been wasted. And the specific query that's raised in their press release is that the visa-free system that applied set conditions. 2 of the 3 conditions were never achieved. So are you looking at this visa system? Are you addressing these conditions? Why weren't these conditions applied? I mean, what's the point in setting conditions if you're not actually going to apply them?
Well, conditionality is one of the very important principles of this partnership and other partnerships we have with our neighbors and partners. So, of course, we are proceeding only after certain conditions have been fulfilled. I can talk about visa liberalization, macro-financial assistance, and gradual approachment between the EU and Ukraine in many different areas. So criteria are quite clear. They are codified with the member states. And the issues like the report of the Court of Auditors is very useful feedback and input to feed into the discussions and future dealings with our partners, in this case with Ukraine. So, of course, we will be reflecting on it together with the member states, but bottom line is Ukraine, as Eric said, is a strategic partner. We are both committed, EU and Ukraine, to work on getting this partnership to work as best as possible, to get EU and Ukraine as closely together as possible. Political association and economic integration. There is a clear roadmap, clear criteria. Ukrainian leaders are repeatedly committed to fighting corruption and deal with the oligarchization. These things do not happen over time. You have to take it overnight. They happen over time, actually. It doesn't happen from one day to another. You have to take into account also the context, not only the historical, but also the geopolitical context, and the challenges the country is still facing internally. you cannot forget that Ukraine is still fighting a war on its territory against the insurgents in the east, who are supported from Russia. So these are all the challenges which Ukraine is aware of, tries to overcome. We are helping them, and we solve all the issues that come up, including corruption or the problem of the oligarchs, in a dialogue using the best means and the best ways we have. And the best means and the best ways are codified between the co-decided between the EU institutions and the member states. So this is an ongoing process which eventually we hope will lead to the desired effect.
Okay, thank you very much. I see no further questions on Ukraine. Other foreign relations questions? Is this on Ukraine or on foreign relations? No, if it's, hold on, is it foreign relations? If it's not, just hold on. Yeah, just I'll come back to that afterwards. Momchil, you have a question for Peter?
Yes. Yes, I have a question for Peter. Do you hear me? Okay. So, my question is related to the visit of the President Ursula von der Leyen to the Western Balkans. She will be also in the Republic of North Macedonia. And as we all know, Bulgaria is blocking the beginning of the negotiations with North Macedonia. Will this topic be discussed during her visit to Skopje? And what can Bulgaria expect any message from the visit of President von der Leyen to Skopje?
Thank you, and apologies because this is clearly a question for me and not for Peter. Momchil, the President is going to the Western Balkans to reascertain the EU's commitment to the region. These are also partners of the European Union with whom we have very, very strong links, and of course the visits will be the opportunity to discuss these relations and the topical questions that exist, including, of course, in relation to the sort of bilateral issue that you have mentioned, I am sure. Now, we will be organizing press conferences at each stop of these 6 visits, and therefore there will be ample opportunity to discuss or to answer questions on what has been discussed. Please.
Thank you, Eric. It's difficult for us to define what is, because this region is both enlargement and foreign policy and security and everything. So I didn't know whether to say, is it foreign affairs or not? So it is also foreign affairs. My question is a bit formal question. In an announcement in the program, it's written that President von der Leyen travels to Kosovo on an official visit under United Nations Security Council Resolution 1244/99. So I don't recall whether this resolution sets the conditions for the visits of the President of the European Commission. I guess that it's related to the wish from the Commission to distance itself from the status of Kosovo. So if so, why you don't use the official explanation on the nomination of Kosovo, which says that this designation is without prejudice to the position of member states on the status, in the line with Security Council resolution and the opinion of ICJ on the Kosovo Declaration of Independence. So, because if this was not important, you wouldn't mention it, but since you mention it, what's the motive to mention it in that way? Thank you.
Look, the President is going to Pristina. She will meet the authorities there. She will discuss the issues that are topical in relationship to in relation to the relations that we have with Kosovo. You know that this visit is going to take place 1 week before the summit, which will take place in Slovenia. This is what matters to us. It is the fact that the President, is going to go to the region in order to prepare for a successful summit. Any other questions for us on this? No? Any other issues for us today? Yes, please.
Yes, Nicola Nielsen, E-Observer again. I just had an issue. Sorry, it's about former Commissioner Phil Hogan. If I may ask a question on this, I know it was asked yesterday as well, but I'm just a bit unclear. I mean, you mentioned that you're verifying media reports on whether or not he took on a new third job, but I mean, the DLA Piper released a press release on this on the 16th of September. Are you also verifying the press release itself? I mean, I'm just unclear how that process, why it's taken so long to verify whether or not he actually had a third job when there was a press release issued on the 16th of September by DLA Piper announcing that he took a third job. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Balázs.
I might have a minor update compared to yesterday when I had the opportunity to brief on this subject as well. But before I jump in, maybe I would highlight that when we seek information with regard to a former commissioner's potential post-mandate activity, we would not base our evaluation on a press release published by a law firm or a lobbying organization. We would rather reach out to the commissioner, the former commissioner, and try to get information from him. This is how it works in general. Now, we've been in touch with former Commissioner Hogan in the past days to clarify the facts of this matter, including a possible link between this activity and the authorization to provide services through the company Hogan Strategic Advisory Services. As you know, and also I mentioned yesterday, we had authorized 2 activities for the former commissioner since he left the Commission, one of which is the company Hogan Strategic Advisory Services. So what we are doing now in our exchange with him is to examine a potential link between this new possible activity and a formally authorized activity. Now, as long as this examination is ongoing, this will take a bit of time. I might not be able to provide further information, but we will certainly keep you updated once we have more.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Balázs on this? No, thank you. So I go to Mindaugas.
Hello, thank you for the floor. My name is Mindaugas Laukagalis. I'm from Lithuania National Radio and Television, and I have a question about health affairs and Health Emergency Preparedness Agency, because on Monday the European Parliament Committee on Environment, Public Health and Food Safety is going to discuss the creation of HERA agency, and some MEPs fear that the agency will not meet the expectations of Europeans and will be, I quote, just a unit within the Commission. So ahead of this discussion in the Parliament, what is your comment to those who are doubting the effectiveness of this agency? And just to clarify, could you just update us on the creation process of this agency? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before passing the floor to Stéphane, let me point you to what the President said in her State of the Union speech on the importance that we attach to HERA as a body that will be able to help us better prepare for future pandemics, and on the fact that we have announced significant funding in order to ensure that the agency and a specific program with Team Europe can be put forward in order to precisely carry out the work of HERA. So I think that we are very confident that HERA will be a potent tool to ensure that we draw the lessons from an operational point of view from the pandemic, and that we are in a better position to anticipate and respond to to future pandemics. Now, it is clear we are still at the beginning of a process. It is something that will take time, but it is clearly a priority for the Commission, and I would say that we are certainly very glad to see that this is a subject which the European Parliament sees as strategically as we do and will follow very closely. On the steps, particular steps, I don't know, Stéphane, if you can say anything specific.
Thank you very much. No, I don't think I can add a lot to that. Indeed, as Eric has said, the pandemic that we're going through is no doubt not going to be the last pandemic. We have to be very prepared for future pandemics, building on the experience that we have built now over the last months and over the last year. Experience that calls for, or that rather has shown, the added value of cooperation, coordination, and working together with the member states. And this is why HERA would work on two fronts. On the one hand, on better preparedness, and secondly, also on better managing crisis when a pandemic crisis hits us. With regard to the preparedness, we will do, or HERA rather, will have a very broad portfolio of activities, of tasks, of objectives. It will better monitor potential threats, doing better threat assessments. It will also work on identifying potential threats that are coming our direction, preparing with industry, with the different actors, the necessary manufacturing capacity, and so on, to be better prepared. Secondly, there is the crisis stage, which is also going to be important when a pandemic actually hits and has been recognized as such. HERA's decision-making tools will become more powerful. It will be in a position that it can more quickly act quickly, for instance, concluding contracts with manufacturers for vaccines, for medicines, and so on. It's very important that this is done, obviously, with the member states, which is why the member states are part of the board. And I would like to draw attention also to the fact that, of course, work with the European Parliament is very important in this context as well. The European Parliament has been invited to also appoint an observer for this HERA board that has been established. Thank you, or will be established.
Thank you very much. I see no further question on this. We go back to Mose, who I believe has a question on Horizon Europe.
Yes. Thank you, Thierry, for giving me the floor again. This time I try to be briefer. It relates to the announcement in the beginning of the conference by Johannes. The two countries, Iceland and Norway, have now already signed the agreements on Horizon Europe with the Commission. I wonder, what about the remaining associated countries in the Western Balkans, and also, I think, Turkey and Israel? When do you expect that discussions, negotiations with them will be finalized? And more specifically, are there any remaining, let's say, political issues with those two countries, Turkey and Israel, which might delay the finalization of the agreements and the signatures? Thank you.
Johannes.
Yes, thank you, Mose. So I said earlier during my proactive announcement that discussions are ongoing with several other countries, non-EU countries, that have expressed interest in joining Horizon Europe. And I've invited you to stay tuned, so there's not so much more I can say. I mean, it's maybe important to underline that Iceland and Norway are, of course, members of the European Economic Area, so the process is different and actually a little bit more easier in a way to become associated to Horizon Europe. For example, there's no agreement to be signed because there's already the EEA agreement, and so there's basically just an amendment, a technical amendment of the protocol that governs the association to be done, and this was done. So that's why the legal basis is different and the process is different. All other countries need to sign agreements. And for the UK, once again, the process is once again a little bit different, because there you have the trade and cooperation agreement. I can tell you maybe that the negotiations have been finalized for 11 countries that expressed interest. You have on our website, you see all the countries that are, let's say, considered association candidate countries. These are 18. Now you deduct 2, Norway, Iceland, that brings you to 16. And of the 16, 11, with 11, the negotiations have been concluded in a way, and now the process is formalized and then finalized, and then the agreements can be signed. So we are not far, but you're not yet there. And these countries are Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Kosovo, Serbia, Turkey, Armenia, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no further questions for us today, so let me wish you a very good weekend, and I will be traveling with the President next week, so Dana will have the pleasure of coming to the press room for the midday briefing. Thank you.